Welcome back. You're watching Australian Agenda. Well, as mentioned earlier, it's well known, obviously, that the Prime Minister has been abroad. He's been visiting a range of nations. A lot of discussion around climate change and security issues. But, of course, the other issue in the mix has been Australia's ongoing trade relationship with all of these nations. Sky News' political editor, David Speers, has been following the Prime Minister, and he sat down with his Trade Minister, Robb, to discuss some of these very issues.
Minister, thanks for your time. I wanted to start by asking you about Iraq in particular. The situation there has seen the oil price climbing over recent days. Are there trade implications as well as defence implications in what's going on there, do you think?
Well, I think just any instability, and clearly it's a very concerning situation in the country, but any instability has a ripple effect. It's not a huge issue for us, country to country. We haven't got a huge trade into Iraq, but as I say, the instability that could emerge, depending on what happens there, is a great concern, I think.
Speaking of instability, we've also seen a number of Arab states raising concern about Australia's position on a very sensitive issue, East Jerusalem. Can you clear this up for me? What is the Australian government's position? Is it occupied? Is it disputed? What is East Jerusalem regarded as by the Australian government?
Well, you know, there's lots of different settlements, but the ones particularly in East Jerusalem, they have been a matter of clear dispute for a long time, and so that is the description that seems most fitting for those. And I think we've written to all of our respective counterparts in those countries to try and just clarify it. I think there was a misunderstanding or an overreaction in lots of ways about what was being said. Our position on Israel has not changed one iota.
But has the position changed on how you describe East Jerusalem?
Well, it has been. That particular part of the city, you know, has always been a question of dispute, and the whole point of, in any sort of two-state solution, that was one area which there would need to be a dispute resolution.
Sure, it was previously described as occupied.
Well, a lot of the other settlements were described as occupied. Many people often would describe the East Jerusalem differently as disputed territory, right? And so it's been either or in many cases, from my experience, having visited and talked about it.
But did you need to go here? I mean, did George Brandis need to go there and say, we've now decided we're going to refer to it only as disputed East Jerusalem and no longer occupied? That's a loaded phrase. Was that really necessary?
Well, I haven't had a chat to George about it.
So you weren't consulted about this?
I wasn't aware of it, no. But, you know, I think George was looking just to clarify the situation. He must have found himself and others in the course of government business, you know, using different terms to describe that part of of Jerusalem, and George sought to get some clarity on it.
But it has upset Palestinians, Iranians, Pakistanis, Indonesians as well. These are important trading partners, aren't they?
Yeah, as I say, I think there was a misinterpretation. I mean, they seem to assume that there'd been some change in our attitude to Palestine and the Jewish state and the two-state solution. And I think once it's clarified that our position on Israel has not changed one iota, then hopefully this issue will pass.
Did George Brandis overstep this?
No, as I say, I think he, because he sought to clarify, it ended up being interpreted, reported. I don't know really how how it then all happened that they thought that there was some change in terms of our policy. There is no change in our policy.
Let's turn to why we're here in Houston. What do you think has been achieved by this visit by yourself and by the Prime Minister?
Well, clearly we've had, I think, an outstanding week. It's been a sort of sellout week in a way. Everywhere we've gone there's been enormous interest, particularly because of firstly the infrastructure initiatives being taken in Australia, in Toronto and in New York. In New York, I had a round table with the 7 biggest funds in New York, representing around $1 trillion under management. In Toronto, I had a round table with the major pension funds and a couple of other funds in Toronto.
And are they saying they're going to invest more?
Well, there's nearly $500 billion there under management. The enthusiasm was palpable. And the big thing that has caught their attention in a profound way is the asset recycling initiative, where the Commonwealth will provide a 15% bonus to the states who privatise assets and put the money back into other infrastructure.
So they told you they're going to start putting more money in?
They said they're setting up offices, and they said they will be examining all of the options that came up. And since we had the budget brought down, there's been something in excess of $50 billion worth of projects the states have identified, and this sort of thing, you could see, they have very little opportunity, almost none in the states, with privatisations, and very, very little or difficult examples in Canada. So to see this happening in a stable country that they know they've had successful investments in before, there was a lot of excitement, I've got to say, about the brownfields projects coming up, which will be the sale, and the greenfield projects that will be also coming up because of the money being reinvested. So from both the pension funds, who are looking at brownfields and long-term assets to match their liabilities, and the PPP construction companies looking at greenfields projects, a lot of the world is saying there's a lot of money around but there are no projects. We've given them projects, and it generated enormous interest, and especially, well, not especially, but including in New York, where we've had success but less success in the past. Here I had the 7 biggest funds in New York, got options all over the world, and again, a lot of enthusiasm for what was happening in Australia.
I want to talk about the energy boom that's underway here in Texas, here in Houston and around Houston in particular. The shale oil and gas revolution that's changing the American economy and has much broader implications as well. Put that together with the widening of the Panama Canal that's happening over the coming years. They're going to be able to export LNG into the Asian market. Is that going to create competition for Australia there, do you think?
It will create competition, but it will seriously deepen the market in Asia. I think the gas and petroleum will logically go into Asia from the United States.
Does that push down the price for Australians as well?
Well, the thing is that the other thing that was confirmed here is just the extraordinary opportunity and demand that is emerging in the next 10 to 15 years for energy. About 15 million tonnes of gas a year. A new project has to come on stream which delivers that amount per year. That's the same as their Gorgon gas project. That's our biggest, one of the biggest in the world. That's got to come on stream every year for 10 years.
So even though it's booming here, it's not going to make future projects in Australia unviable?
No, it's not. No. I think the competition will be particularly healthy because it will bring in another competitor who is also efficient and at the top of the market, and it will put pressure on other smaller players in other countries. But no, I think it'll create opportunities for us because it will put pressure on other higher cost countries that for LNG and whatever. So that we can emerge in a market that's galloping in terms of demand.
When you look at particularly the shale oil and gas industry here, do you get frustrated at all about the restrictions the states in Australia are putting on coal seam gas development?
Well, some states are putting on. Look, at the moment, Queensland have got 40,000 new jobs because of the coal seam work. Those Gladstone projects start delivering next year and the year after.
But in New South Wales, it's virtually frozen, isn't it?
Well, I think it is a frustration from the point of view of domestic gas. It's starting to be squeezed. We do need more gas. We are drowning in gas reserves all around the country, both with conventional and unconventional, coal seam and shale gas. We've got the 7th biggest reserves of shale gas in the world, and we haven't started to tap into that. So
one of the differences, do you think, here in the US, the farmers or landholders get a royalty? It can be up to, I think, 20%. In Australia, they get next to nothing because the mineral deposit or the gas reserves are considered a public asset rather than something that...
Well, that was the case. And that certainly stymied a lot of early development of the coal seam, even in Queensland. But the market has settled at about 12% of revenue for the farmer, and that certainly that ignited what has happened in the US, no doubt about that. But what has happened in Australia, and I've got confirmation here in the last few days, is that you add the royalties, state royalties, together with what the farmers are getting, and it is getting close to, or it's around what it's costing companies here for royalties, plus what they're giving the farmers.
But of course it's not going into the farmer's pocket back home, is it?
Yes, it is. No, that's my point. There's a royalty paid in Australia to the states, but over and above that, there's an amount not dissimilar to what is happening here in the US. But you would expect that over time. In the market, the farmers in Australia are no different. Okay, they might own the land here, so put them in a stronger position immediately. But now to get the cooperation of farmers and to make it worth their while for the disruption and all the rest, they've had to slowly but surely gravitate towards what they're paying the US farmer for their gas.
That was Sky's political editor David Speers speaking to the Trade Minister, Andrew